Hey guys, welcome back to another video on Gamers Edition, and in today's video we're going to be looking at the Nvidia GeForce GTX 1080. And the reason I'm making a video on this is to answer the question, is it worth it to buy in 2021 for your gaming PC or whatever your use is for it? And we're going to be going over a few points on the graphics card, whether it's worth it to buy, some benchmarking, and my conclusion, whether you should buy it or not. Now, just some quick information. I bought this graphics card secondhand for £170. And yes, I know that does sound like a steal, which it actually is. And more on how I bought the buying process of this, I'll tell you later on. Okay, so first things first, we need to install this graphics card. So we'll just have a quick tutorial. So push down that switch there, pick up your graphics card. In my case, it's a GTX 1080. Slot it in. You should hear a click. If you don't, then just double check for it so that it's seated in. There we are, seated in. Okay, so I'm just going to get the graphics card all screwed in and then I'll be right back. Okay, and as you guys can see, the GPU is now installed, the GTX 1080 is now installed, and what we're going to be using to benchmark this GPU are a few games and Heaven benchmark. So the games we're going to be using to benchmark are going to be Forza Horizon 4 and Grand Theft Auto, and we might put CSGO in, although that is just a CPU intensive game. It doesn't really use much GPU, and we're going to be using Heaven benchmark to test out the performance of this GPU. Okay, so let's just talk about a few things about this GPU. Now, as you guys already know, this is an EVGA GeForce GTX 1080. It also supports SLI, as you guys can see over here. There's the SLI bridge. There we are. Just focus. There's your SLI. It has a 8-pin connector for power, and this is actually the blower style design. And what the blower style design basically is, it's a single fan that bees on one part of the graphics card. It takes in the air, and then the hot air basically exits from the back of the graphics card. And if you look closely at graphics cards that are designed like this, you'll see the back has little fins for the hot air to exit. Okay, so the first benchmark we're going to be running is Heaven benchmark, but just before that I want to show you guys Msi Afterburner, and that I am not running any overclock on this. This is just raw performance you get from the box. So as you guys can see, there are no overclocks. Just zoom this in for you guys. Everything's on stock settings and the fan is on auto. Let's just make sure. Yep, and the fan is on auto. And the idling temperature of this graphics card is around 50 degrees. And now, because I've just turned the PC on, it's actually at 47, but the idle temperature of this graphics card, because of the blower design, is around 50 degrees. Okay, so let's jump into Heaven benchmark. So we are now in Heaven benchmark, and you can see all the settings here. So what we're going to do, we're going to put this on, yep, that's already on directly 11. Then the quality we're going to put on ultra, so we can squeeze everything out of this to see what the maximum performance is. And this we'll put on extreme, and that's about it really. Full screen, yep. System resolution, that's already done. Okay, so let's run this benchmark and see what this thing can do. Now, because this benchmark takes a bit of time, what I'm going to do, I'm going to pause the video, and then once it's all done, I'll bring you guys right back. Okay, so the benchmark has now begun, and we should be back after this is done. And just let's see what the FPS is averaging. It's averaging around 120 FPS, so it's in the hundreds, which is good. And we'll be back once this whole thing's done. And while this is running, I'll just give you a quick breakdown of what I'm running on this PC. So the CPU I'm running is the Ryzen 5 3600. I'm running 16GB of Corsair Vengeance RAM, running at 3200 MHz. And the graphics card obviously is the GTX 1080 by EVGA. Okay, so the benchmark is now complete. Now the FPS we averaged was around 160 FPS. The score we got was 4024. The minimum FPS we got was 9.7, and the max FPS we got was around 345. Okay, so not bad because we had this on extreme tensillation and ultra quality, and then the render we had direct 3D11, so not bad. Now what we're going to do is close this, and because I had MSI Afterburner on in the background, we can see what the temperatures were averaging. So let's exit here, quit, yes, and now we can check out what temperatures the GTX 1080 was averaging. So let's get rid of Heaven Benchmark, head over to MSI. Okay, so let me get you guys zoomed in so you can see this. Here we are. So it was averaging, so at the beginning it was around idle it was around 50 degrees, and then once we started the benchmark it shot up all the way till 70 to 80 degrees, and it stayed roughly in the 80s, and then once the benchmark was finished it dropped all the way back down to 65 degrees, and it's still cooling down. And as you guys can see, the fan speed automatically adjusted. So whilst we were doing the benchmark it was in the 80s, so not that bad, guys, not that bad. And throughout that whole thing it remained completely quiet. Okay, so we can now minimize MSI Afterburner, and now let's jump into a few games and do a few game benchmarks. Okay, so the first game we're going to jump into is Forza Horizon 4, and we'll do a benchmark here on ultra settings and everything on max. If you guys are wondering why I'm not using OBS Studio to screen record, it's because I don't want to add any extra stress to the graphics card or the CPU, because not everyone's going to be running OBS whilst they're playing games. Okay, so we're now in Forza. Let's start up. And I'm just going to go to the video settings and show you guys what I've got set. So let's head over to options, video. Now you can see I've got dynamic optimization on, dynamic render quality on ultra, and then the resolution is there. Now I'm going to remove this frame rate cap, so I'm going to turn this off, and we can put this on unlocked. Okay, screen's on full screen, and pretty much everything else is sorted. So we have dynamic optimization on, dynamic render quality on ultra, resolution 1920 by 1080, and we have the frame rate unlocked. Okay, so let's jump into some benchmarks. Let's quickly save this. Okay, let's double check. Yep, it's saved, and let's head into a benchmark. Now we do have a live FPS counter right here in the corner, but you guys won't be seeing that because I want to keep this video short. I don't want to make it too long for you guys. One thing I definitely have to upgrade now is this monitor, because this 60Hz HD monitor isn't really giving you everything this graphics card has to offer, especially this whole system now. Okay, so we're in the hundreds, and we'll be back once this thing's all done. We're at nearly 50% progress of the benchmark. Okay, so the benchmark is now complete. As you can see right here in the left hand corner, we achieved 119 FPS on ultra settings, so everything on max, which is pretty good. As you guys can see, the target was on unlocked variable frame rate, because we wanted to get all the FPS, and yeah, not bad actually, really good. So the CPU simulation 218, GPU render 137.8, and GPU got 125. Okay, let me just zoom that in for you guys because you probably couldn't see it. And then the FPS minimum for the CPU, well, forget the CPU, we'll look at the GPU. So GPU render 105 and GPU 105.9, and then maximum for the GPU was 154, and the maximum CPU render was 177. Okay, now let's jump into GTA's benchmark. And just before we do that, I want to give you guys a quick look at this graph they've got here. So you guys can pause the video and look at this if you want to. Okay, now for this graphics card, I know that we shouldn't really be running a GTA benchmark because you can pretty much get a potato to run GTA because of how old the game is. It came out on PS3, which is a dinosaur. So you can pretty much get a potato to run this. But we'll put everything on the ultra settings, on the highest it can go, and see what this thing can do. Okay, so now let's adjust the graphics. So we've got suggested limits. Okay, forget that. Let's keep this on direct 11, full screen, 1920 by 1080 resolution, aspect ratio auto, refresh rate 60 Hz because this monitor caps at 60 Hz. Output 1 monitor, so let's put everything on. There we are. VSync, we'll turn VSync off because it'll probably mess up our frame rate because it'll connect it with the monitor. Let's see, put everything on max here. Hope you guys can actually see this. I've got a potato camera, very high. Let's put this on. Oh, okay, so very high is the max. Very high, very high, very high. Ultra, there we are, reflections on ultra. Okay, we've got that on ×8. We've got water quality on very high, very high. We'll put grass on ultra. We're putting everything basically on the max settings. So shadows, we'll just keep it on Nvidia. It can sort it out itself. Post, we're going to put on ultra. Motion blur, we're going to leave that. Let's see what else we got. Put this on very high. That only goes too high. And there we are. And we've pretty much used not much of the video memory. We've used just barely a bit. Now let's apply these changes. And the game's going to automatically restart, and then we'll jump into the benchmark. Okay, so we are now back on GTA. It took a bit of time resetting, and as you guys can see, all the graphic settings are on high, the way we put them. Very high, ultra, very high, ultra. Yep. Now let's do the benchmark. So from what I know, you just gotta click the tab button and it automatically does it after you've clicked enter. Okay, loading benchmark. Right. Okay, so the benchmark has now started with everything on ultra and very high settings, and we'll be back once the benchmark is complete. Hopefully this one takes less time because the Heaven benchmark took pretty long. Okay, and for those of you who haven't already, please subscribe to Gamers Edition so we can reach our goal of 2,500 subscribers by September, which is coming pretty fast. And stay tuned for more videos. And if you like this kind of content where we do benchmark tests and talk about graphics cards, let me know in the comment section down below. We can do some more content like that, or if you guys want to see some other content reviewing other gaming things, or actual looking at games, DLCs, things like that, let me know in the comment section down below. Well, the game restarted without me telling you guys, but it did show the screen there what it averaged the FPS. However, for some reason, without me pressing anything on the keyboard or mouse, it decided to restart the game. Anyways, it averaged around 150 FPS on ultra and very high settings, which still isn't bad considering this graphics card in 2021 is pretty old, but because it has a solid amount of VRAM and has a solid GPU core itself, it handles everything like buttery smooth. Okay, and that's going to be it for this video, guys. Now my conclusion on the GeForce GTX 1080 in 2021. Right, so first of all, don't buy this graphics card brand new because that's just way too much. You can probably get a 30 series graphics card for that much, and in 2021 you probably won't find it brand new because of the chip shortage we're having. However, if you go on the second-hand market and you can pick this thing up for £170, which is a complete steal for this GPU, especially in my system. It handles everything buttery smooth. Or even if you could get this thing for £200, I'd highly recommend this. £300 too at the maximum. However, if you're going to spend more than £300 on a GTX 1080, then don't go for the 1080 variant, go for the 1080 Ti, as if you put another £50 in, £70 in, you can get a Ti model which has 11GB of VRAM and has a better core. So if you're going to spend extra, go for the Ti variant. However, if you're on a budget and you can find this thing for £170 to £200 or even £250, definitely pick this thing up. It's well worth the money. Okay, so that's it for this video, guys. If you like what we do around here, don't forget to drop a like and subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next video.